show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's June 28th, 2021. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined as always by Matt Shodell, our managing editor, and we're catching you up and discussing the news of the day on the website at CaneSport.com, and a lot to discuss. What a wild weekend. I mean, Matt, Paradise, it lived up to any expectations I think that anybody could have. You had a wide assortment of recruits there. You had a star-studded list of former players. The fraternity that we saw, the mingling between the legends and the recruits. It all was just absolutely really stunning in its magnificence, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And it was really cool. Like, you and I both covered this team for, feels like forever. And to see guys that we covered that are coming back, maybe with a couple of gray hairs even, that's not so great to see. But guys like Calais Campbell, you just catch up with these guys. You say hello, you talk for a while, I mean, it was really nice for me to see Sean Spence. He was a guy I really had a really good rapport with, especially coming out of high school, and just such a great guy. And, it was just really cool. Even John Beeson and Brian Monroe was one of my all-time favorites. Chatted with him for a while, and seeing Romberg come back. I mean, it was just really cool seeing all the former greats come back, and then, and then you see the younger kids that are coming up and trying to be the greats, right? So, I think there were even some autograph hounds out there. I'm not sure if they were trying to get the legends signatures, or signatures, or both, but I've never seen that before. That was a first for me. To have fans out there trying to get signatures in the street outside the entrance was a new one.
I always love the opportunity to interview Michael Irvin. He's always been one of my favorites. He and I actually entered the University of Miami pretty much at the same time, and I feel like I've grown up with Michael. And when people ask me about my career and they, the greatest moments covering the Canes and all that, one of them, without question, was the night after the national championship game. I actually was working for the Miami Herald back then, and I was assigned to go out on the town after winning the national title with Michael Irvin. And I got to tell you, Matt, it was one of the most incredible experiences.
Hey, you've never taken me out on the town. What the heck?
I know. But I'm telling you, this was one of the most incredible experiences anybody could ever have. I mean, we went to Strawberries in Hialeah, which was like one of the hot spots in town back then. And if you could see the reception that Michael Irvin got when he walked in the place, and obviously all the girls were climbing all over him and all that, and it was one of the most incredible assignments that I ever had in my career. But so yeah, obviously have known Michael well through the years, and it's always great to see him. And they always let him speak at Paradise, and he never disappoints. And he did that again on Saturday night, and you could tell that all the recruits, even the coaches, were watching him and are just mesmerized by every word that comes out of his mouth. That's the degree of respect that he still has at the U. And so it's great to see him. Always great to see Lamar Thomas, my sidekick on CaneSport radio shows through the years. And he's back living in South Florida. So maybe we'll get him back on some CaneSport shows again this fall. And just great to see all the guys. Calais, the way that he was teaching Jalen Phillips and Greg Rousseau, and he spent like a half hour with those guys, and he was showing them, pass rush moves and giving them little tips on how they can excel in the league. And for a guy that's still in the league with a different team than they're on, to be doing that, I thought was just typical of the fraternity of the U. And that these guys still all feel for each other. And another guy I was excited to see was Joaquin Gonzalez. I couldn't believe that Joaquin's been a little vocal on social media the last few years. I was kind of shocked that Manny Diaz let him in the building, but maybe it was kind of like a peace offering. And I'll tell you what, I was watching Joaquin coach the offensive linemen, and you would have thought he was preparing a team for the Super Bowl. The passion that he was putting into these kids, and he dropped a couple F-bombs and stuff like that. I mean, he was coaching these kids hard, Matt, and just the whole thing. We could go on and on for hours about Paradise.
One of my favorite stories, Joaquin and Joel Rodriguez were best friends, but they would always prank each other. One of my favorite things was, I'm pretty sure it's Joaquin, they go in the locker room and then they go out to practice, whatever, and they have to go to class right afterwards. So Joaquin hid his buddy's clothes that he's supposed to change into to go to class, like in one of the ceiling boards, and Joel couldn't find it and basically had to go to class either in his uniform or just miss class. So I think he actually wound up missing class. He didn't want to go to school in his uniform. But, that sort of stuff. They would just mess with each other. It's a nice camaraderie. And seeing those guys again was great.
All right. So amazing scene at Paradise on Saturday. We have tons of coverage, everyone. If you haven't taken the time to look at it yet, there's all kinds of stories. We have a roundup with all the recruits. We've got photos. We've got videos. Our YouTube channel is loaded up. You can go check that out. All kinds of coverage, all kinds of interviews, all kinds of feedback from recruits. A couple things that I'll mention for the purposes of our Good Morning CaneSport show. I think we should talk for a moment about Jacob Hood. And, there's offensive tackles and then there's offensive tackles. And this kid is just unbelievably imposing for a kid that's not even in his senior year of high school yet. And people have compared him to Bryant McKinney, which probably is pretty applicable. And as part of his official visit weekend, I think he even got a chance to talk to Bryant McKinney on the phone. And Miami's doing a great job recruiting Jacob Hood. I spent some time with him in Atlanta, I guess about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago now, at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge. I walked away from that with the impression that Miami had a real live chance to get him going into his official visit. Now he's had the official visit. And Matt, I still think they have a really great chance to land a kid that, physically you just don't find many guys. They say he's 6'9", he might be. And he's, probably like, what, 330, 340. And he fills the frame. He looks like a college lineman. And when he gets into a college strength program, that's only going to get magnified even more.
Look, they're 6'9", they're 6'9", right? Guys who are 6'7" get listed at 6'9" sometimes. This guy, just click on the link, below the video in this Good Morning CaneSport item, and the photo that'll pop up above the story with Jacob that we did. Yeah, you can see he dwarfs Jalen Phillips. He looks like two Jalen Phillips, and he's athletic for his size. It's insane. If Miami can get this kid, they're going to be set at left tackle for 3 years probably. I don't think he's going to last a fourth year because this kid's got future star written all over him.
Yeah, especially once he gets into a real strength and conditioning program and sheds the little bit of baby fat that he has and keeps building muscle, you could see that this guy has the capability to be a monster and obviously one of the real critical targets in Miami's recruiting class right now. Miami also had Daughtry Richardson and we got to give a shout out to Coach Justice for the job he's doing recruiting offensive linemen. To have, Jacob Hood come in from Tennessee and Daughtry Richardson, who's the hot, local guy right now at offensive tackle. And I'm sure he was trying to convince both of them to come and be bookend tackles at Miami. He's one of the coaches that I think has stepped up his recruiting game in this cycle and seems to be having some effectiveness.
I would agree and disagree. I love that he's going after these guys. I'm not sold that Miami's going to get any of these top guys. I wouldn't point, the Julian Armellos, for instance, and this guy Jacob Hood. I wouldn't list Miami as leading for any of these top guys right now, including Richardson. And you saw at Paradise Camp, Coach Justice gave out a new offer to Snoop Amama. We're going to call him Snoop because that's his nickname. I can't say his first name. Tupubai, I think. But then he came from Utah. He had like one other Power 5 offer. But for those of you who have followed recruiting for a long time, you see that when a school, and not just Miami, when a school offers, obviously they have a board, right? So they have their first 4 guys that they want on the offensive line. They're taking 4 of that class. They have their top 4 guys. These are the guys we're getting. These are the guys we want for the first few months of recruiting, whenever it is a year before the signing day. They're going hard at those 4 guys. They realize they're not getting one of them. offer the next guy, offer the next guy, offer the next guy. So it troubles me a little. And it's great that Coach Justice saw this kid and thinks he's going to be good enough to play at Miami. Great. But obviously, Coach Justice thinks there's going to be a spot open for this kid at some point, or you don't offer the kid. If you think you're getting your top guys, you're not going to offer new people at that position. You're full for that class, right? So it shows you that even though they've gone after a ton of top guys, had a ton of offensive line official visitors, obviously, as of now, they're not going to fill all their spots with those guys that they've bought in. And the truth be told, they can get even one or two of these guys that have come in, officials in June, these offensive linemen, they're all monsters. That would be a success in my book. But Coach Justice is being smart. He's done this a long time. You got to have backup plans. They're not all coming to Miami. It's great they're trying to get them. And listen, it's by no means over. But I don't necessarily think that the majority of these guys they brought in June on the offensive line are coming here.
All right, you might be right, but I will take what's going on right now over what's been going on any day. And we've started working on our State of the U series that we always put out every summer, where we analyze the program inside and out and take a look at all the recruiting classes that make up that year's team and that sort of thing. And we've seen some relatively average recruiting through the years, and they need to raise the bar, and they need to press higher for some of these out of town prospects. And you're going to strike out on probably most of them. You're not going to get every one of them, but you can't just rely on Dade and Broward County kids to make up an entire roster at the University of Miami. It's not going to get you to where you want to go. It's a good foundation, absolutely, but you just can't make the entire program Dade and Broward County kids. So I like that they're pushing themselves this year. They went out. They've got some better recruiters on the defensive side of the ball, and they are working it. And I love watching T-Rob go after recruiting. He's been everything I think that Manny Diaz was hoping for when he went out and convinced him to come to Miami. And he's out recruiting like he wants to be at Miami for a while. And I love what I'm seeing there. Ishmael Aristide is doing a good job. He's learning. Younger guy, a little less experienced than a T-Rob, but this guy's all business, and he's doing a really good job with Jonathan Patke of recruiting these linebackers, and they're in the mix for a couple of them, and it looks like they got a chance to land. Maybe a Tolan or Jackson, and who were in this week, and start improving the linebacker position. If you watch the tape on those guys, and I encourage you guys to do so, their videos are embedded with the stories that are on the website right now about their weekends, and you hit the play button and watch those guys tape, and you see an ability level that looks a little bit better than what has been being recruited in recent years. So I like what I'm seeing. I like that they seem to be recruiting a little bit better than they have in the past. I like the effort that's going into it. I like the fact that they are reaching for some of these out of state kids that everybody wants. I was texting last night with Bear Alexander's dad, just checking up and seeing where things are with Bear, and he and I have struck up a little bit of a relationship. And I just said, hey, I knew they had just gone to Alabama, and I wanted to see, is Miami still firmly in his recruitment? And he was unwavering. He absolutely, Miami's still in this thing. And, he's always been a fan of the U. And, are they going to get Bear Alexander when he announces at the Under Armour game in January? I'm not ready to predict that yet, but he did say that Miami will stay in the mix there. And it's a sign that they can have effectiveness recruiting these national kids if they go work it and put the effort into it. And I think we're seeing that, Matt. And I assume you would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I don't think we disagree on any of the points. I mean, I agree they have to do what they're doing, but at the end, you gotta start winning the battles. I mean, that's the bottom line. You could bring in 60 great recruits. If you get 2 of them, that's not a very high success ratio. So Miami's got to get to the point where some of these other top national programs year after year are getting, where they can land these top recruits. It's like almost like you feel like nowadays when Miami's going head to head with Clemson and Alabama and Ohio State and you name another, Georgia and whoever else, it just feels almost like a defeatist attitude among the Cane fans, and like, oh, well, we're going to find somebody else. Like, it shouldn't be like that, and they are bringing the kids in for visits. You hope it's not just for a vacation. The kids nowadays, they're all sort of wise to the recruiting process. They'll all say, oh, yeah, we loved it. Of course, Miami's definitely in the picture, up there with Clemson and Ohio State and Alabama or whatever. And in the back of your mind, you're wondering, is this going to be the year, right? Because it just feels like for so many recruiting cycles, Miami has not been able to go head-to-head with these guys. And until you can go head-to-head with them in recruiting, it's hard to go head-to-head with them in games, unless you're developing guys much better than those other programs once they get there. And it's tough to develop guys like those programs do, or better than those programs do, because, they obviously have elite coaches as well as Miami does. So, I think the proof's in the pudding. We'll find out when these kids announce and when these kids ultimately sign. Was this a good strategy, or should Miami have been going harder against maybe some kids who are going to have already committed elsewhere by the time Miami says, we should have gone after this kid and that kid, and is it too late? And maybe it is. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. But, these are the kinds of scenarios that play out in coaches' minds, and they have to be cognizant of, because you only have so many coaches that can recruit, and they only have so many hours in their day besides what they're doing with the football team. And it's a fine line. And if you're wasting hours upon hours over, a series of weeks and months on guys who aren't coming, those are hours and hours that could have been spent making the team better with a guy who is going to come. So it's really important that these Miami coaches realize at a fairly early juncture with each of these kids, are we like really going to be in the driver's seat potentially? Or is this kid just coming for vacation? Is he going to wind up at Alabama or Ohio State? So, this is what the coaches do, and this is their job, and hopefully they're good at it, because we'll find out, signing day in December and February if it's panned out or not.
Yeah, and we know from talking to these kids how hard that is. A lot of these kids, you can't read what they're really thinking, and they don't, or they just legitimately don't know what they're going to do yet. But we might as well mention that over the weekend, the Hurricanes dropped Quan Lee from the commitment list, apparently, which takes them back to 3 commits. But, the reason that there aren't a lot of commits is because all the kids that they're recruiting are considering multiple schools, and they've taken their visits, and there is a lineup of commit announcements that'll be coming in the month of July. And some things will start coming into focus. There's going to be kids that want to lock in their spots and that kind of thing. But it's not always easy to read these kids, and especially for the coaches, because the kids are always telling the coaches what they want to hear, which sometimes is the truth, sometimes it's not. We've talked about this many times through the years, how lots of times, kids are more honest with us, when we're talking to them than they are to the coaches. All the coaches that are recruiting them always think they're going to get those kids. So it'll be interesting, and I think it'll be nice here the next few weeks. We'll have a chance here, probably later today and tomorrow to kind of take a step back and do our own evaluation of where things stand and figure out what kids are most likely to be Hurricanes, and we'll be focusing more on those. Now,
hold on, Gary, just give people an example, because it's that what you said is so important, right? About coaches having trouble knowing what's going on. Like, years ago, this is just a perfect example, but it happened to me from a long time ago. When Mario Cristobal was an assistant at Miami, Martellus Bennett was a commitment at that time to Miami, and he decommitted, and he told us he decommitted. We wrote the story, and it was right before practice that day that the story came out, and we headed over to the practice field. And after practice ended, Mario came running up to me like, Martellus didn't decommit. I called him right after I saw your story, and he told me he's still committed to Miami. Well, he did decommit. He just was scared to tell Mario, because Mario's an adult, and Mario wants him in the class, and they've had a relationship, and it's hard to say no. So this is what some of these coaches are dealing with. It's a kid who's trying to please adults who've been building relationships with them over months, in some cases years, and now you have to tell, I'm sorry, it's over. They're kids talking to adults, and it's very difficult. And I don't envy Manny Diaz and the staff's task, because it's not talking to the kids where they're going to get their answers. They have to do a lot of work talking to, whether it's guidance counselors, friends of the kid. Obviously parents you talk to. It could be just some mentor who happens to know, the kid told me he's not really that interested in you guys. Whatever it is, you need to find out. And it takes so many manpower hours to get the actual information that, this is what good recruiters do. And so you have to assume when they bring them in for official visits, take one of these spots that they've heard all positive. Yeah, we got a chance. And so you hope they would.
All right. So stories on the website. You've got stories about the Hood and Richardson visits. I mentioned Tolan and Jackson, the linebackers. You've got stories on those guys. And I'll make note that Jackson came all the way from Omaha, Nebraska to come to Paradise. That's a very good sign, I thought. Got a story on Shamar Stewart back at the U for the 5th time in the month of June. Has to be a good sign. Doesn't mean he's coming. We're not going to predict that yet, but it's a good sign for Miami that he's been on campus 5 times in the month of June. When you consider everywhere that kid has gone all around the country, also in the month, they have to be encouraged. I mean, they're clearly in that race. We're not going to predict he's coming yet, but they're clearly in that race. You mentioned Snoop Amana, the O lineman from Utah. I guess you pronounce his last name Ankana. I guess. He came.
That's why it's called Snoop.
Yeah, just call him Snoop. Yeah, he got his offer that he came from Utah for. So that story's on the site. There were 2024, 2025 quarterback targets at Paradise. Stories on them. Brandon Innes, the 5-star receiver in the next cycle, the 2023 class, he came back to campus for Paradise. Story on him. If you missed the Wesley Basaint drama this weekend, you can catch up on that. So all kinds of news on CaneSport.com this morning for you guys to catch up on. Hope you enjoy it all. Hope you enjoy the videos. Absorb it all. A lot of really, really good coverage, and you'll get decent insight into what the different recruits that were at Paradise are thinking in terms of their futures. So Matt, closing thoughts, before we get to work for today. Spectacular weekend in every way.
I mean, for me, my closing thought is it's a dead period. I'm going to finally get some sleep. I'll wake back up again. Wake me up. Set my alarm for July 27th. Is that when it starts again? There's like a 1-week period when we're open again. But yeah, June was a lot of fun. I hope fans appreciated that it was actually an exciting June for a change. Normally June, we're like just trying to find stories. Like, what can we write about? Let's talk to some former players. Let's try to get a couple of, whatever it is, some people over at UM, maybe walk-ons, do a nice feature, good feel-good story, and a walk-on or something. This is a little more exciting than that, having kids come on official visits, having Paradise Camp, having camps every single weekend, official visits every single weekend. I mean, it was a great June. I hope fans, appreciated it, and they could take a little bit of a respite. There are a lot of announcements coming up, like we said, and then the season's around the corner. So really, it's a really nice flow for fans, right? You get all the visits in June, you get announcements in July, August started camp, season starts. There's no break. So it should be a fun run.
Yeah, we were talking to Manny Diaz at Paradise, and I asked him, you realize Alabama's like, a couple months away now, Coach. What are your thoughts? And he talked a little bit about that. That's another story everybody would want to check out. Watch that Manny Diaz interview, and he had some interesting things that he talked about. All right, well, that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. Thank you for waking up with us, and we'll be back at you, later this week. And obviously there'll be constant stories coming up on the site as some of these kids start to give some clarity into what they're doing. And so for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Until next time, we'll say goodbye, everybody.